Napoleon. Yeah, we just got back, literally just got back from seeing Napoleon. We didn't talk about it at all on the car ride back, so this is all completely first thoughts. First off, I think we want to talk about spoilers, right?
Well, completely. This is not, like, this is 100% an entire spoiler. Don't watch this if you're going to go see the movie, or don't want spoilers.
Okay, but if we could give a quick 30-second impression without spoiling anything. Go see it, yes, no?
If you're into history or politics, absolutely go see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was good.
Yeah, I would say too as well. Go see it. Go check it out. It's worth your money. It's worth the admission time. I really liked it. I liked it overall. I liked Joaquin Phoenix's performance. The action pieces were fantastic.
Yeah, I just have to say though, like, going into it, I already had a very positive impression because I love Joaquin Phoenix. Like, personally, he's an amazing animal rights activist. He's an amazing person. But acting-wise, I like almost everything he's in. So I already had, like, a good impression going into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was great. The thing I liked the most was, like, when you told me it was, like, 2.5 hours, I was like, oh, this is going to be too long. And I was worried that the pacing wasn't going to be right. I couldn't believe that was 2.5 hours. Yeah. Because I wasn't bored at all.
Yeah, me neither.
I wasn't bored at all.
I think actually, if I could make. Oh, hi, Elsie.
You want to join?
You want to come up here?
Come on up. Come here.
You gonna join in?
Yeah, she's gonna join in.
You gonna join in on our Napoleon discussion?
Come on. I don't think she knows much about Napoleon.
I think that's fine though. You have for a movie that was 2 hours and 40 minutes. I actually wish it was longer. Yeah, it was 2 hours and 40 minutes. I actually wish it was longer. It felt like I thought the pacing was incredibly well done.
Yeah.
I wish it was a longer film, but Napoleon. The main thing is that it does leave out a lot of Napoleon's story.
Like, I don't even know that much, but I know enough that I was like, this is not the whole story.
And so that's the overall impression, is that go see it. That was way longer than 30 seconds, but go check it out. Mine. I mean, I want to start at the beginning here. So they start at 1789, right? So they start with the execution of Marie Antoinette. France is clearly in an unstable position, right? And you can see that throughout the Parliament, and then it goes into Toulon. That you see Napoleon, and he's really. You can still tell that he's inexperienced. You can tell that there's a bit of hesitation to his actions. He actually scales over into the fort and engages in hand-to-hand combat. I have no idea if that actually happened. And that's one thing too that I want to do for this, is that I don't want to talk and say, oh, well, that's inaccurate, that didn't really happen, barring a few things. But even from a dramatic perspective, it was good to see that he's completely out of breath. You can tell that the character,
he was anxious.
Exactly.
He had never done that before.
And that's what I really, really liked, is that they didn't just immediately make him out to be super general Jesus, God, the greatest soldier that's ever lived. Like, you can tell it's like, oh, he's anxious. One, he almost just got killed, right, from taking a cannonball to the face.
He should have been killed. They did a good job of making him a real person that was building his confidence over time. And which, in the case of a commander who's, a part of commanding these wars and stuff, of course you think of this person as like, they're so full of themselves, to be able to do what he did, he must be the most confident guy ever. But you really see how someone sort of becomes into that position and grows into something like that and becomes the person that everyone knows as Napoleon. Yeah.
And that's one thing I want to plant a flag on too, is that Napoleon's actual character in this film is that he's kind of awkward.
Oh, he's super awkward.
He's super awkward.
It's very awkward.
And there was especially a lot of the film takes place around his relationship with Josephine, which is what was kind of expected, and what I thought was a bit of a detriment of the film, is how much time was spent on the relationship between him and Josephine, because massive chunks of his life are missing, right? I wrote it in here, but you go from You go from the French Revolution to Toulon, right? Then you go into Egypt, so it completely skips out the Italy campaign. Completely skips out his first campaign, which I thought
they do
talk
about it. They do go into some detail about it, but you don't see any scenes from it.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
You just there's one sentence saying I brought victories in Italy, and I thought that's outside. You get that one scene in Toulon where he's sort of shaky and you can see that, but it would have been nice to sort of have that development of him being more of a competent commander, because outside of that first scene in Toulon, though at least it has that character progression, by the time we hit Austerlitz, he's a military genius, right?
So I actually completely disagree with you about the relationship thing. The reason why is because, firstly, the man was a romantic.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, like that part was historically accurate. But also on top of that, it doesn't matter if you're talking about Napoleon, you're talking about any great, commander, I don't know the technical terms, person that goes off to war, and fights in these battles time after time. There has to be a reason, and it's not just, of course they really go into his love of France. They really go into that, but I feel like that's not really... France may be a propeller, but all of these great commanders have their motivation, their drive behind that, and it's oftentimes because of a woman. Sometimes the reason for the war itself is over a woman. So I felt that them going into his romanticism and his drive beyond just his love of France, because what is just a love of land? I thought that was actually really great. Do I agree that they could have made it longer or been a little more balanced with his development? Yes. But I think that leaving out that aspect of his life, I think that would have actually been detrimental to the movie.
At least that's obviously how it's portrayed in the film. Basically, after Egypt, he's a part of the council at this point, is that it's very much focused on the relationship, and obviously Josephine taking up lovers while he's gone, and him trying to chide her, but then she sort of has that power over him. I thought that the dialogue was a little it was almost like George Lucas-y, kind of. It was obviously much better, but it did feel a little forced. It didn't feel terribly natural. Also, everyone was speaking in this film with an English accent, which is fine. Right? That's fine. They did not have to talk like this.
No, that
would have been awful.
I actually have to say, that was the second thing I thought that was wrong, was there was not one single person who had even the slightest French accent.
I think
they didn't try. No, they didn't try. I think that's horrible.
Honestly, I would rather them not try at all.
No. I think that's horrible. And the other thing I want to add to that is the only people who spoke any other language there was a couple Russian soldiers, and there was like 2 sentences in German when they were talking. From the Austrian. Yeah, the Austrian 2 guys that were talking together.
The other thing too is Joaquin Phoenix doesn't age a day, right? In this film, he looks the exact same as he does as 22-year-old Napoleon with his 22-year-old flow, right? As he does.
His hair's receding a little.
The tiniest little bit, right? But he looks identical throughout the whole film. That is perfectly okay with me, though, right? I think it would have been way worse if they had a cast, I don't know, 3 different actors, right, to have Napoleon during Toulon and during Egypt.
I'm not questioning that. He's fantastic. But I'm just saying, a dedicated actor like that, like, you guys could have tried harder to make it France. That's all I'm going to say.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Right? And then, obviously, the coup happens from there. One thing that kind of bugged me about the film was really the dialogue, just to sort of build on talking about some of the George Lucas-y stuff. Part? Well, it's
like just the narrations and the letters?
It's tough for me because, like, you're making a film about Napoleon, right? You're making a film about his entire life. And so it's quasi a period piece in that sense.
It's not quasi, it is.
It is just, okay.
It's completely a period piece.
So if it's a period piece, it's like, he says, like, oh, my wife is an SLUT, right? Which definitely did not exist.
Well, that's what I mean. Is there would have been a French word that you could have replaced that with.
But that's fine. But even if you had to call, if you had to call her a more traditional word for that, right? The fact that he says that, there's like these modern little touches in there. And then when Napoleon, when he meets the British ambassador, he goes, "Oh, you guys just have boats," right? That was
funny. That was a really funny line.
It was funny, but tonally, there was some moments where I found it was barring the line between...
No, there was some modern moments. There was other things that made it, like, not the most believable when it came to it being a period piece.
Well, that's where it's tough, right? Is that...
But then again, they're speaking English.
That's what I mean. So, like, if you want to cut the hard lines of saying, okay, well, everyone's going to speak English, I think that's fine, right?
But then they should have... I'm sorry, but if you're going to have a movie with so many different, nationalities... and you're going to have some people speaking their language and some people not. Like, there should have been some fluent, like, it should have stayed the same. If they were going to choose English for all of these characters, they should have just stuck to English.
Right. And so, yeah, that was just one sort of tonal issue that I found with the film. But even then, like, as soon as you get... obviously some of the relationship stuff with Josephine, then it cuts to his coronation, which I thought was very, very well done.
I liked that. Is that accurate? Did he actually
he did crown himself. But I thought that was well done. And then it cuts to Austerlitz, right? And Austerlitz, one of the things that I wanted to see in this film was that I wanted to see the actual scale of this, of the Napoleonic Wars, right? Because when you watch the Epic History TV videos, when you see all these other things, all this other media, if they're reenactments, they don't have the budget, right? So it's either animated, right? Or it's just a little small scale battle with 16 actors or whatever, right? But for this to actually have the budget to be able to, obviously it's all CGI, but with obviously hundreds of extras. Right?
I will say that was the one thing I really give this movie credit for, was I know how this stuff is made, but I felt like the war scenes were the best part of the movie. Because they were so well done, and to me, again, with my limited knowledge, felt so authentic. They were the only part of the movie where I felt like I was there. Like, you were experiencing this. Like, there was an actual emotional reaction from these crazy scenes.
And so the tone they were trying to strike when we're on the ice, right? And obviously famously
that was fantastic.
Cannons into the ice, that actually did happen.
Yeah.
But even still, the music in it, the tonality of it, one thing I kind of realized is, like, when you actually see this death, this suffering on screen, is that it was almost a little sad, right?
They did it so well.
It didn't feel triumphant. It didn't feel like a movie. Like it's defeating his enemies or anything like that. And I think that's okay. I think that's a good thing, right? Is that the fact that you see these men slip under the ice and drown, and it's not like, yes, go Napoleon. It was, I think it was very well done. It portrayed these soldiers as human beings.
It was really somber, and there was one. I mean, that whole scene was fantastic, but there was one moment that really struck me the most, was not only seeing the troops, like, I mean, I've seen this in your map games before. I see how, like, things work from a bird's eye view, but seeing how they attacked and just the tactics of what they did. And then the end, there was a scene of, was he an Austrian or Russian soldier?
In Austerlitz?
Yeah.
Austrians. They were
Austrian. So there's a scene where at the end, the guy, I don't know the guy's name, I think he was like one of the commanders or whatever, but he was the one that was the farthest out, and he almost made it.
Oh, he was just the flag bearer on the horse.
The flag bearer on the horse, but it was very symbolic because, like, he almost made it past. They got him. He fell into the water, and I think he got shot in the head or something. He's dying, and the blood is seeping out, and you have him literally encompassed in the flag.
Yeah.
And you see the flag sinking with him, and there was this symbolism in this scene that was beautiful, but like you said, somber. You don't feel one way or another for any of these, or at least I didn't feel one way or another, whether French were positive, British were positive, Russia, like you felt sort of the same, or at least I got the feeling that there was like a sameness between all of them, and you were just experiencing them as like you were a part of any of these nations.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing that I quite liked, is that I wrote down here is that the scale and brutal, right? Because it was, I thought the way that it was shot was absolutely brutal, right? And then what really bugged me is that it then goes back to a lot of more focus on the relationship and between Josephine and Napoleon and everything. And I get that, right? If you're doing a film about his life, then you have to focus on that. And it's how you make the story work, right? But then what really bothered me is that they skip out tons of events between Austerlitz and then his march on Russia. And his march on Russia is, you see a supply wagon that's attacked by Cossacks, right? You see the absolute brutality of those raids on the supply wagons. And then they're in Moscow, right? Or correction, you see Borodino, but then after Borodino, they march on Moscow. They see that Moscow is completely empty.
I know that you're mad about the missing thing, but Moscow was a great scene.
Yeah, no, it was good, but then I think it was Marshal Ney says to him that, you know, we could either turn back or anything like this, and Napoleon's frustrated, and then
because they're about to march into Russia's winter.
Exactly.
Like, they're going to go to St. Petersburg, and he's like, let's turn back because you're going to kill all of your soldiers. We don't have the resources to do this.
No. And so they trudge back, but then, and this really bugged me, is that this could have been the apex of the film, right? This could have been, Napoleon is on his last legs. You've seen him come up this far, right? And they completely skip over Leipzig. They completely skip over the final battles in France.
Yeah.
And you think from a director's perspective, right, is that they're on the run. They're back from Moscow, and you want to see those actual defeats.
Yeah.
Napoleon, until Waterloo, is not defeated in this film.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
you just...
There is a really powerful scene when he gets back to France.
About
them saying, you know, we've lost, what was it, 10,000 men that didn't make it back? No, 20,000.
No, but that's after, though, right? That's after. That's after he gets back to France and he's exiled to Elba.
Yeah, there's a lot that they missed in the meantime.
Exactly. So they're marching back from Russia. You get 2 scenes of that. And you see some of the depravity that the troops are going through. These troops are eating this God knows what of a carcass.
It was their horses.
And you can see, their horses.
Yeah.
And you can see the pure desperation that they're going through. And then I wish that they just have had a main battle in Leipzig, right? Or if not Leipzig, then on the borders of France. And then you can see Napoleon, right? There's a famous tale, right, of him after he was told that Paris had been taken, of him, you know, he had 15 minutes of him just with his head in his hands, right? And I wish that we had have seen this. I wish that we had have seen Napoleon defeated, Napoleon on his last legs, because after Moscow, you see them march back, and then immediately he's signing the treaty to abdicate. And that's just such a missed emotional opportunity for the audience, right?
So, yeah.
Because it's just, he marches back from Moscow, it's like, oh, okay, he's defeated. Okay.
I do have to say there was like, it was sort of news in the movie when he gets back to France, and they made it play out. Like, if you're someone who doesn't know anything about Napoleon, you don't know the history or whatever, right? You would it almost makes it seem like he's completely oblivious, completely unaware, and then he gets to Paris, and all of a sudden, all this news.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that, like, here's the thing. I will give the directors kudos because they're trying to fit a lot of content into a short amount of time.
Yeah, we'll talk
so
about
I
that.
will say that, you know, some places they chose well, some places they didn't. But there should have been, you're right, there should have at very least, if they weren't going to put in any other scenes of conflict, there should have been something that clarified to the audience that there was a lot happening back in France, because it does make it seem, and that was the only thing I will say about the relationship thing that I felt was off, was it made it seem the only reason he went back was for Josephine.
Oh, I did not like that at all.
And it's like that's not historically accurate. I'm sure there was a personal part of him that cared about that. Obviously, creating an heir was a huge
by that point, he already
factor.
had an heir. right?
But illegitimate heir, which is different.
And that's where, you know, I'm kind of going back and forth on what's okay to be historically inaccurate and stuff like that. But I don't know, just from the film's perspective, it's like, okay, so he's just going back for Josephine, right?
And then as soon as you get back, you realize, oh no, he's actually back because
and she's dead.
France is falling apart.
Yeah, under the Bourbonists, under the Royalists, under King Louis, right? Yeah. Very creative with the names, King Louis. Yeah, I was really upset about that part missing. And that when he finally does get back, it's like the troops throw down their weapons, and, you know, famously he says, if you'll slay me, you'll slay my emperor, or whatever the quote. I think they changed it actually slightly in the film. The troop speech was slightly different than from what actually happened, but okay, whatever. But when you're just watching the film and you don't know about why this is happening, you're just like, why would they even join him? Right? It's just, it doesn't provide that sort of motivation and that understanding, and the audience doesn't get to see that, right? Of like, why are these troops willing to throw down their weapons? Why are they willing to fight for him again? And it's just like, oh, well, because he's their emperor and stuff. It doesn't have that motivation.
It doesn't land.
No. It doesn't quite land from an audience's perspective unless you actually know what's going on before, right? And then from there you have Waterloo, and Waterloo was done fantastically, I think. The whole battle at Waterloo was obviously done incredibly well. That was very seeing the hollow squares, and but what was also a big shame of this is that within the Battle of Waterloo, the actions of Mermot, the actions of Marshal Ney, you didn't see any of this. Like, can you tell me any of Napoleon's marshals?
No.
Yeah, not one.
No.
Right, not one marshal. And I know I saw Bernadotte, at least I think that was Bernadotte.
There was
I saw
a
Marshal
guy.
Ney, I saw Mermot.
There was a guy. I don't know his name. I don't know if it was mentioned at all. But there was a guy that was like his right hand man that was there the whole time.
Yeah.
I think he might have mentioned his name a couple times.
I think Oudinot was in there, but
that was it. There was no one else.
To my recollection, because I literally wrote it down here. I said basically no characterizations of his generals. I thought that was a missed opportunity too, in that, again, you don't need to focus on every single marshal.
Yeah, that'd be
right?
hard.
But if you had focused on some and then shown more of the relationship between Napoleon and his marshals, right? You had to shown more of the reason why these men are willing to fight and die for him. It just, I wish it really sort of had a bit more of that cinematic impact. And so overall, I think that when you try to condense a man's life, especially one like Napoleon Bonaparte, into a 2-hour and 40-minute film, I almost asked the question of why. Why put a whole life into one single film? A 10-part miniseries? Fine, right? I get it. But do you think it would have been better if perhaps they had focused on one section of the film rather than basically from 20 till death?
I love a good period piece, and a lot of the time they do that, where they will take sections of a part of history and give you, you know, a 3-part series of movies or something like that.
But within Napoleon, do you think, like, maybe if they had have just focused on, probably not the earlier stuff, but maybe if they just had focused on from Russia to, you know, to basically Waterloo, right? If they had really, you know, and basically had an intro in the beginning, bringing the audiences up to speed of who is Napoleon Bonaparte, everything like this, right? But if they had put more depth and more time into a smaller chunk of time, do you think it would have been more effective than basically rushing through 50 years? Well, it starts when he's 20, so 30 years of the man's life.
Yes. I do see it from both sides. This is a big Hollywood film.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So obviously you can't expect, it's not going to be 100% no matter what you do with it, right? But what I would have loved to see is this be 2 movies.
2 movies,
like if they had done, you know, like they came into this with the intention of like, we are going to do this, and as long as it hits the box office well, we're going to come back with a number 2 and just give us that first half of his life.
Yeah.
I think that would have given more time to fill in the gaps a bit better.
I think it would have been fantastic if they had have done that in a 2-part series, just as you said, and if it had have ended part 1 right on that beautiful shot where the troops are marching through Russia, right, and then it leaves the audience obviously on a cliffhanger, although they could just look at Wikipedia to see what actually happened, but it leaves them on a cliffhanger, and then you can actually see Napoleon's empire be built up, and then in part 2, after Borodino, see it then basically be destroyed.
Yeah.
Right? I think that would have been better. Steven Spielberg is doing I think it's a 6 or a 10-part series on Napoleon.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, he is.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
that'd be cool to watch.
I think that would be much better.
Your Majesty, we are discovered. Good.
It's a trap! I'm the first to admit when I make a mistake. I simply never do.
So, overall, if I was to sort of wrap it up, I would say that it was a really good attempt. I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed seeing the scale of everything. I enjoyed I enjoyed Joaquin Phoenix. I actually did. He was very awkward. He was a bit of a weirdo. I think
he was great. I think he was great.
And there were some moments too where it was very movie-like, that it's like, okay, well, Napoleon is the greatest ever because he's the greatest thing ever, you know, the greatest general ever, the greatest person ever. And it's a shame that they tried to cram so much into a 2.5-hour film.
Yeah.
But they tried, and I think overall it was pretty successful.
Yeah, I would say that if you're going into this looking at it to be the most historically accurate piece, it does a good job, but it's not going to be fulfilling. Whereas if you go into this as like, this is a Hollywood movie that is about Napoleon, I think it was really well done. Yeah. And I think it's definitely worth the 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd recommend it?
Yeah, I'd recommend it for sure.
I would as well. And I'm actually really looking forward to a longer series on this by Steven Spielberg as well, so that we can get more of the history and more depth. Really, I just wanted more. Because I wish, you know, the film was 2 hours and 40 minutes, and what I said to you after leaving the theater is that I wish that was 4 hours.
Yeah.
I genuinely would sit there for 4 hours and 15 minutes. There exists a cut, apparently, of this film that is like 4 hours and 15 minutes.
Oh, they should release
Ridley Scott has. At that point, if you have 4 hours and 15 minutes of footage, why not release 2 films? Right?
Yeah.
But I hope we get an extended cut, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for joining us on the first, I don't know if last. This was new. This was definitely new.
This was new.
I don't know if last, but we'll see. Movie review. What did you think of the Napoleon film? If you have seen it, let us know below in the comment section. And yeah, till next time.
I guess. Give it 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. Too easy. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.